Ten Bigfoot encounters, Northern California. Sutter County, 1965. Location details. If you are coming from Yuba City, go to Live Oak Highway, and as you get to the famous Pasquini's restaurant, turn off that back road. The first road to the right is it. I don't know the name of it, but it's very simple. Go all the way to the back up the road ramp on the levee. When you stand on top of the levee, look to the left, and about 50 yards there used to be cottonwood trees higher than the levee. They may still be there. I'm 42 now, and it has been a while since I decided to tell my story about what I saw that beautiful sunny day about 11 a.m. If you go down to the Pasquini's restaurant, take rear turn off road and keep going till you see a road turning to the right. I lived at the house by the levee in my childhood years, 1965 to 1968. Immigrants had a shack against the levee and always had a gather for the weekend. One day my mom was out to show the men how she could shoot her new .22 Ruger rifle at the tin cans. After all the fun, a man was just having an idea if he could just use the rifle on Saturday morning for cottontails. Dad and Mom were happy to let him use it. Saturday came around and I noticed the homemade rack with cottontail and jackrabbit hanging upside down near the small cabins to the side of them. My brother told me to go with him and check them out. It was sad to see such a kill. That evening the men showed my dad how beer batter makes a good rabbit roast over the fire, and we all had a share of the food with wild rice and flour tortillas. This went on for 2 weeks, then a problem occurred. Someone was stealing the rabbits from the rack. Since our family was the only one in the camp, we were most likely to blame. My dad beat me up at a card game as beer caused a climax over the rabbit issue, and I could not stand to see it. I was not afraid of anything cause I never watched any TV in my life about scary stuff, so I had no feeling for that in that direction. I went up the levee just to look around and I saw a rat snake. I ran down and told Mom about the snake. Mom said not to go back up again. It could bite me. But my curious mind took me back up the next day. I walked up the levee looking down to the right side where I may have seen it last. When I got to the top, that was it. No snake. Then in the silence of everything but the soft breeze blowing a bit in my ear, I saw something moving in front of me. This huge monkey creature on a cottonwood tree, looking over the levee. I noticed it in the shade of the upper branches because one of its legs was swinging back and forth below the branch. I got closer to adjust my focus on this big creature, and sure enough, it was some sort of ape-like thing but with a smaller head, and it had human-like features. I looked down to see if there was a fence between us, and there was not any fence at all. My mouth was watering over fear and I could not move my legs. I found a way to turn around and get off the levee. As I went down the levee, halfway down I started to run and never looked back. I told my mom about what I saw and she stopped cleaning and told me to just shut and lock the doors. My mom was now thinking of the rabbits that had gone missing and told me food left out makes animals gather for more. We never went over that levee again. Fear after that was something to remember when alone at that age. We moved almost a few years later due to the Juan Corona murders on the same farm and never spoke about the huge monkey by the levee again. Nevada County, 2004. Location details. As you pass through on the eastbound side on Highway 80, just before Donner Pass, there is a truck inspection station. Approx 1 to 2 miles east of that is the first bridge. There is a large ravine with a river through it. This is the spot. They were 300 to 400 feet south of the bridge they crossed over west to east in a straight line. I can return and show you the exact location. First of all, I am a 55-year-old male former Marine, fireman, and state police officer who just recently retired. I have been all over the world in the military and am an avid camper. I have often heard of Bigfoot and thought possible, not likely. Although I didn't believe they existed, I kept an open mind. I've seen many things in my time that were hard to explain but were not as vivid as the following. I was driving on Route 80 EB in California at 14:30 hours. On August 16, 2004, I had just passed the truck inspection station and state work yard which was west of the Donner Pass. As I was crossing over a bridge which crossed over a ravine with a river through it, I looked down into the ravine and saw what looked like about 7 to 8 foot tall, broad-shouldered, possibly male, all black from head to toe, from stepping from the tree line on the west bank approximately 300 to 400 yards south of the bridge. I immediately pulled over to the side of the roadway on the bridge and slowed so that I could see it better. Traffic was extremely light, 2 other cars. When I looked down, I was able to see that the form had no identifiable clothing, demarcation lines, or hat. It then was walking in a lanky movement with arms swinging as it crossed the stream/river. I then noticed a slightly smaller, 6 to 7 foot tall pos male due to no obvious breasts or feminine movements come out from the tree line behind the other male, trailing him by about 30 feet and slightly south by about 10 feet. They both continued across the stream and into the tree line on the east side and disappeared. I sat there trying to evaluate what I had seen. I then concluded that these forms were not any animals I've ever seen. They were one solid color from head to toe with no discernible clothing. They had nothing in their hands or on their feet. I could not come up with any possible concept as to why these individuals would be out there. The temperature was extremely warm, so the clothing, if it was clothing, was way too much. Their faces and hands were the same color as the body. I then proceeded EB with no further sighting. Also noticed the only things I found unusual was that there were no close towns, only the truck inspection station, and they had no packs or any identifiable items of clothing on them, and they seemed to walk out of the woods across the river without looking up to the roadway or left or right as they ventured into the river and across. They seemed unconcerned. They didn't talk or turn towards each other, just walked out of the tree line and straight across and into the woods. I couldn't figure out where they came from or where they were going, especially without equipment. They seemed black in color, like I said, from head to toe, and it seemed to shine slightly as they moved, but didn't appear to be clothing. Nevada County, 2003. After reading report 7804, I suspect that my son may have seen a Bigfoot in early December 2003. His mother and I are divorced, and where she lives outside of Grass Valley. There are houses out there that are close together, but also big areas of wooded lots. He told me that he thought he had seen Bigfoot while walking home from his bus stop. Normally, my ex-wife picks my son up at the bus stop, but he had asked to walk home this day. It is about half-mile from the bus stop to his house. As he was cutting across the woods, about 100 feet from the bus stop and 20 feet off the pavement, he jumped up onto a stump. Below him he saw a black figure taller than 5 feet 10 inches, my height. It was about 15 feet from him and breathing very heavily. It had its arms to its side and was rocking slowly, side to side. My son was afraid but didn't want to scream in case the animal reacted badly to the noise. He just slowly backed up the hill, keeping his eyes on the creature, and when he got to the pavement, ran home. He said the creature turned its head to follow his movements, but otherwise didn't move. When my son got home, he immediately told his mother and then later, me. Neither of us believed it at first. Shasta County, 2001. On August 9, 2001, we were staying in a small cabin 9 miles from the Lawson Park entrance, about 2 miles from Viola on Highway 44. My wife woke me up as she heard a strange screaming-like sound. I was immediately awake and heard what can only be described as a scream-like call that repeated itself. It lasted about 25 seconds and was quite loud, but seemed to be at least a half mile or so past our 20-acre spot, which is on a creek. I really didn't give it much thought, although I knew it wasn't a mountain lion, bear, or owl. A few days later I mentioned it to a friend as the sound was so otherworldly and hard to describe. He suggested, and I rather skeptically checked a few Bigfoot sites and was amazed to hear the same exact sound that had been recorded at different places in Northern California and Oregon. It certainly doesn't sound like anything else. Can't say it was Bigfoot, but the sound is exactly the same. Shasta County, 1986. You take 299 west out of Redding. Go past Old Shasta up to Whiskeytown Lake and take the first turn to the left heading towards Brandy Creek. Just past Brandy Creek Recreation Area, there is a turn to your left that takes you up towards Sheep Camp, and it turns to a dirt track about 1/4 of a mile up the road. You go past Sheep Camp heading up the mountain. Not sure exactly what the name is, but I believe it's called Mount Baldy or Baldy. The road is very steep, but there are TV transmitters at the tops of this hill. The road switches back and forth up the hill, but near the top of the hill, it switches back and you can see it is just like a little step before the top and right on the edge of the tree line. There is a little turnout there where you can overlook Whiskeytown Lake. That is where we camped. Well, first I would like to state that I currently live in the Fresno area, but I was raised in Redding, CA. I have hunted all my life and have heard various critters around and in my tent. My friend Chris and I were camping out one night during the summer on Mount Shasta Valley. I figure it was between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning. My friend and I were awakened by something walking around the pickup, where we were sleeping in the bed of the truck. My first thought was bear, because there are a lot of them in that area. I have had many bears walk around my tent in the Thousand Lakes Wilderness area near Boerne, CA. But this did not sound anything like a bear. It was then that I noticed my friend was awake and looking at me. He asked me, "What is that?" I really didn't know what to make of it. It seemed to be about 40 to 60 feet away from the truck when we first looked at each other. It circled the truck, and when it was near the thicker brush it seemed to come closer. Then it really freaked me out because we smelled a really wild smell. It kinda reminded me of the smell of my dog after he got torn up by coyotes. At the time, Bigfoot never crossed my mind, but my hair totally stood up on the back of my neck. My friend was in the same state. We were both armed with large caliber handguns at the time but were too scared to sit up and look. We both just lay there looking at each other. I could hear myself breathing and tried to be as quiet as I could. Something inside me told me that if you sit up you aren't going to make it off this hill. This thing circled the truck for what I would guess to be about between 1/2 or 2 hours, moving closer, breaking branches, what sounded like on purpose, and making grunting sounds. Sometime before it got light, it seemed to move off to the southwest. When the sun came and it was light enough to see, we got up and looked around the truck. We never got more than about 30 feet from the truck before we noticed disturbed pine needles and broken limbs on the trees about 6 feet off the ground. My friend and I left that morning and went back into Reading. We told a few friends and my dad about what happened. He had no answers either for what happened. I can remember thinking that it sounded like something walking on 2 legs. That really shook me up that day, and to this day I will not go back to Mount Valley at night. I have been back to that spot probably 50 times since then during the day, but towards evening times it bothers me to even be near that mountain. Humboldt County 2021. This is to document my experience on Sunday, June 6, 2021. Something woke me up from dreaming. I was dreaming I was trying to sleep, but there was a noise outside, so in my dream I got out of bed and went to my window and pulled back the curtain. I started tapping on the window to let whoever was outside know they were being noisy and disrupting my effort to try to sleep. After my 3rd tap on the window, I woke up from my dream and realized I had to go to the bathroom. I got up and made my way to the toilet. My bedroom window was open and my bathroom window was open. Just before I flushed, I heard a faint noise, and I started to think it was a motorcycle coming around the bend on the highway, and in that second I thought to myself, who would be riding a motorcycle this early in the morning? Then the noise got louder and drawn out, and had a deep vibrating howl, and then it stopped. I realized then that it was something I have never heard before, and it was not human. It sounded like it was on one of the mountains behind my house. Afterward, I noticed there were no dogs barking, not even my dogs, and there weren't even any crickets. It was dead silence outside. I was telling myself, oh my God, did I just hear what I think I heard? I headed back to bed and noticed the clock said 3:33 a.m. I asked my husband if he was awake. He had been snoring when I was in the bathroom. I told him I had just heard something. I explained the sound to him and I said I think it was a Bigfoot. I could not believe what I had heard. I could not sleep for over an hour, and we laid in bed waiting for more howling, but there was none. The next day, when I told everyone in the house, nobody had heard it. Later Sunday morning, I used my cell phone to Google different animal sounds to try to find the same howl I heard. I tried mountain lion, wolf, fisher, fox, and none of them are in the least bit similar. Then, I Googled Bigfoot howls. Oh my God. The 1994 Ohio moaning howl is almost exactly what I heard. I got chills when I listened to it. I played the recording to my household, and my oldest adult son recognized the sound also. He, as well as a few of his friends, have had a few experiences too, including a rock being thrown at him. He has the rock in his bedroom. I phoned my other family members and told them what I experienced, and my mom told me that there was a post on Facebook about a week earlier from someone that lives a few blocks away from me. She was returning home late at night near the local dump between Hoopa and Willow Creek, California. Apparently, she thought she saw something near the highway, and so did the car behind her as the other car turned around and drove back. This location is only a couple of mountains away from where my home is located. I figure the Bigfoot traveled to Hoopa from the dump site. I have lived in this area, Wagepack and Hoopa, CA, almost my entire life, and I have never, ever heard such a howl. I think about the experience daily, but I actually feel fortunate to have witnessed this rare creature howling. Humboldt County 2006. This report is for my daughter, who today thinks she saw 2 big creatures that looked like the creature called Bigfoot. She was pretty shaken up about it. She was so scared that she did not stop. She said the creatures were walking in a pond between Oric and Trinidad off of the highway 101 this morning about 10:30. She said they were very close. She saw the big one's face. She said it looked like a monkey face. The other one was stooped over so she could not see him very well. Del Norte County 2008. Location details. KOA campground located just off of Highway 101, 5 miles north of town. We were on our long vacation from Missouri in Crescent City, California, staying at the KOA campground. This was our 2nd night at this campground. We were camped at Site 401, way back in the isolated section of the campground, far from anyone. I had just finished cooking our supper on the portable propane barbecue pit, which was located on the picnic table. We both went inside to eat. During the time I was cooking, I set up a campfire, but didn't light it yet. After we finished eating, I started the campfire. After the fire was burning for about 15 minutes, I kicked it into the fire pit from the grate. At that time my wife got a very strong feeling that we were being watched from behind our camper. She said it seemed to move, the feeling, from behind the trailer, from one end to the other. There were trees and dense foliage behind the trailer. I started to look around with a flashlight to see what it was, and after not finding anything, I started the car and plugged in the 12V spotlight. Looking around for about 5 minutes, I thought I saw something move in the distance, behind a tree. This was in the opposite area from the trailer, where no one was camped at all. We both were shaken up and went inside the trailer for the night. After 10 minutes my wife heard 2 whoops, coming from the area that I thought I saw something move at. She was in bed lying next to the window. I didn't hear the sound. One more thing to add, is that the night before we heard dogs bark in the distance. This night it was all quiet, no dogs at all. The closet camper was about 100 feet away towards the main office. There was no smell. Del Norte County, 2003. I stopped at a filling station and the guy told me I was 50 miles from Crescent City. I traveled about 30 minutes up 101 when this occurred. I'm a 54-year-old man living in San Francisco. I've never had any interest in this subject until this week. An old friend of mine moved to Gold Beach, Oregon, and I was driving up to see him. I had never been on Highway 101 before, and became nervous driving on the 2-lane winding roads. I kept pulling over to let cars in the back of me pass. About 20 miles or so before Crescent City, I pulled off to allow cars to go by. As I went to pull back onto Highway 101, I heard the most horrifying scream that I had ever heard. I screamed myself and ducked down on my seat. Looking up next to my Honda CR-V was a filthy-looking gorilla. Best as I can describe, it instantly ran into the tree line a few feet away and vanished into the dense brush. I saw it for maybe 3 or 4 seconds at a 3/4 profile. I would say it was 6.6 feet to 7 feet high, with a wedged head, and it had very dirty matted dark brown dull hair. Strangely enough, seeing the thing didn't frighten me, but the scream it gave out only a few feet from my open window almost gave me a heart attack. I never heard a noise like that, and I never want to hear it again. Butte County, 2002. Location details, go to the Feather Falls trailhead. There's a small 6-spot campground there. We were in the 3rd or 4th spot, the only one with wood stairs leading down to it. I was camping with 4 friends at Feather Falls Campground several miles outside of Oroville. We were the only ones camping there. We stayed up late talking and whatnot and had gone to sleep about 1 a.m. Sometime later, it was still dark out. I heard what sounded like a tree branch being whacked against the trunk of a tree. It had specific patterns and rhythms, but the interval of time between episodes was random. I heard similar noises from another spot in the area. I would estimate that these noises were about 300 to 400 yards away, maybe more. My friends who heard it, who don't believe in anything they don't see, said it was a woodpecker. I've heard a lot of woodpeckers, but never at that time of night, or with the irregularity of the sounds. I didn't hear any vocalizations at all. Butte County, 2003 bonus. Location details, between Oroville and Forbstown. Just below on the Oroville side of Robinson Mill Road. I'm writing this for a friend who doesn't have internet access. Last summer, he was driving towards Oroville. He had just passed a place called Robinson Mill and came around a corner when right in front of him at about 100 feet, something was crossing the road. It was walking on 2 legs and was covered in medium brown hair from head to toe. One thing noticed was its height, about 5 feet tall. Its build was long and thin for its height. The hair hanging from its arms seemed to belong. It was very fast as it ran. At first sighting, the being was walking across the road at a leisurely pace, but upon sensing my friend's approach, broke into what he described as a very hurried and incredibly fast pace. He said that it literally leapt into the brush alongside the road at a dead run. It never looked in the direction of my friend's approach. It was right in the midday sun and was a medium dark brown. It may have been a younger one or something, because it seems in most sightings they are very tall. The beginning of the sighting was about a 100 feet distance. The distance was 35 to 40 feet at the last part of the sighting. He saw it leap into the manzanita brush from only about 40 feet away.